Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
Maria had long felt more like a servant than a wife, and the news of her husband's relatives coming over was the last straw. While her husband was giving out yet another set of instructions, she made a decision to leave forever. But when a fortune teller in the train compartment touched her hand and uttered a mysterious prediction, Maria was left speechless. Opening the door with his key, the man barked toward the kitchen, from where the distinct aroma of fried meat wafted, accompanied by lyrics from popular songs. "Maria, what are you cooking in there that's stinking up the whole building? Trying to poison me again?" A young brunette peeked out from the kitchen, puzzled. "Santiago, tell me, when have I ever done that? And I don't smell anything bad at all. There's a wonderful aroma of stew in here, maybe something burned in the neighbor's place." Without waiting for a reply, Maria went back to preparing dinner, while Santiago continued to grumble under his breath. "Yeah, what was I expecting? Same old excuses." By the time Santiago made it to the kitchen, Maria had everything ready and announced the evening's menu. "Tonight, we have stew for dinner with marinated mushrooms. Or, if you'd prefer, I can heat up some chicken soup for you." Santiago grimaced at the sight of the aging comedy actors on her laptop screen. "Ugh, turn off that stupid movie. You know all the jokes by heart and could recite the entire script word for word instead of the characters. And don't even mention yesterday's food. That soup was nothing but thin slop. As my grandpa used to say, the grains are chasing each other with clubs. I like my soup thick, and yours turned out to be nonsense. So I'm not eating that watery mess, especially not day old slop. Just bring me the stew. Hopefully, there's actually some meat in it and it's at least somewhat edible." Maria was momentarily stunned by her husband's long-winded criticism of her cooking skills, but silently paused the movie and closed her laptop. Santiago, however, wasn't done with his stream of biting remarks. "Why are you standing there like a slowpoke? Bring me the food already. I don't have the luxury of choice. Can't you see I'm hungry and pissed off? Work is a total nightmare with the end of the year approaching. Everyone's running around like headless chickens, the bosses have lost their minds, and everybody wants something from you. You don't even know whose report or presentation is the most urgent anymore. With all this chaos, I didn't even get to have a proper lunch. And here you are, stinking up the place and dragging your feet like you're deliberately trying to starve me to death." Maria's nerves were stretched to the limit, but she still tried to maintain some semblance of a friendly atmosphere in the apartment. She bit back the sarcastic remark that begged to be spoken, that beggars couldn't have servants, and if her husband were truly starving, he wouldn't have turned down perfectly good soup. Instead, she simply placed a steaming plate of stew in front of him and pulled a neatly arranged bowl of mushrooms from the fridge. "Ugh! What is this disgusting stuff?" the man protested, spearing a tiny mushroom with the fork Maria had thoughtfully handed him. "It's like eating snot." Maria smiled and patiently explained to her husband as if speaking to a child. "Santiago, these are slippery jacks. That's just how they are. Try them, they're delicious. Noah gave them to me. She has a summer house in a great mushroom picking area, and she generously gifted me a jar." Santiago, grimacing, nearly threw the fork with the mushroom still skewered onto its prongs back into the salad bowl. "Don't we have any normal mushrooms? You could have stuffed some champignons. You know I love them. You're home all day doing nothing. Was it really that hard to go to the store?" Maria tried to explain that she had a last-minute work order, which was why she even started cooking the stew later than she should have. But that only made Santiago's mood worse. "What kind of disappointment did I marry?" Santiago ranted as he ate the stew without stopping his stream of complaints and orders. "Brew me some coffee, but not that weird slop you like, real ground coffee. And put something on the table, but not that cheap apple jam, I can't stand it. Of course, a honey cake would be perfect right now, but would you ever think of making one to treat your tired husband? Fine, at least bring me some truffle chocolates, my favorites." Maria timidly reminded him that just yesterday, Santiago himself had asked her to limit his sugar intake. That only earned her another round of scolding. Since when do you think you can boss me around? At work, everyone's trying to throw their weight around, and now at home, it's the same. Do you even remember where you'd be if not for me? Bring me those damn chocolates, and don't push me to sin. Maria obediently fulfilled her husband's request and started serving herself some stew when Santiago gave yet another command. For God's sake, get that slimy stuff off the table already, it's ruining my appetite. She didn't mention that Santiago had devoured his portion just fine without even noticing the mushrooms. Silently, she put the salad bowl back in the fridge and sat down to eat. But she nearly choked when she heard her husband's next announcement. By the way, my parents and Luis are coming to visit. They plan to stay for the week before New Year's and another week after, so they can take their time sightseeing. Santiago began listing everything Maria needed to do to ensure, as he put it, a top-tier visit. He firmly believed that both entertainment and meals were entirely her responsibility. Maria, you are the lady of the house. Well, technically, the apartment. Whatever, that's not the point. The point is, it's up to you to plan everything properly. There's still time, but you can't afford to slack off. Get to it. You might as well start writing down everything that must be on the table, then you'll figure out the rest. You're the lady here, so it's all in your hands. Oblivious, or unwilling to notice, his wife's distress, Santiago continued issuing orders about how to host his family. No stale bread ends. You won't manage to make them good anyway, they'll just be dry as cardboard. Get salmon. Or trout, if necessary. But not farmed fish, the meat reeks of pond scum. Get proper coffee. Ideally, Jamaica Blue Mountain. That one's hard to find, so don't let the salespeople trick you into buying a fake. My father hates when his coffee has already been pre-digested by someone else. Why are you just sitting there staring blankly? Write it down. That way, you won't forget or mix anything up. No mistakes, no problems. Maria remained silent. In her eyes, there was already a very serious problem. In the year and 4 months of their marriage, not for a single moment had she felt like the true lady of the house. Her status in the home hierarchy was about the same as that of the washing machine or vacuum cleaner. Even their high-end coffee maker held a higher rank than she did. At least Santiago treated that machine far more gently than he treated his own wife. Maria, by all accounts, was nothing more than a housekeeper, a cook, and a cleaning lady. Realizing there was no way to avoid the visit, she felt her heart sink. It was all too easy to imagine how soon she would be criticized by a well-coordinated quartet of in-laws, a family she had never truly become a part of. The woman had no illusions. There was little chance they would finally notice her efforts and hard work. Even her husband's younger brother, the spoiled and pampered teenager Luis, would, as always, criticize her during their gatherings. Either the shrimp wouldn't be seasoned enough, or she would bring the wrong kind of chips from the store. He had wanted red caviar-flavored ones, not just salted. Or the coffee wouldn't be sweetened enough. When Maria once pointed out to her 16-year-old brother-in-law that he was old enough to add as much sugar as he wanted, her mother-in-law had swooped in like a hawk to defend her precious son. She scolded Maria, saying that a good hostess always ensures her guests' comfort rather than making them do everything themselves. The worst part was that Santiago hadn't even thought to defend his wife. Instead, he had chuckled and given his younger brother some advice: never do something yourself if you can get someone else to do it for you. The joke had made everyone laugh. Luis had even promised to make it his new social media status. Their mother beamed with pride, and their father gave Santiago a thumbs up. Only Maria had felt sad. That phrase, more than anything, perfectly summed up Santiago's life philosophy. Of course, at work, he had to fulfill his professional duties himself. But at home, he successfully applied that motto, shifting nearly every responsibility onto his wife. Even small household repairs were her concern. Sometimes she handled them herself, other times she hired professionals. Santiago never got involved in domestic matters, and Maria never pushed him, preferring not to bother her husband. Grocery shopping had also quietly become her sacred duty, since Santiago vehemently opposed deliveries, fearing they would bring subpar products. Yet he himself was always either too busy or too exhausted to go shopping. Which meant once again, she would have to haul heavy bags, then cook, clean, and serve more than usual. "Why are you so quiet?" Her husband's voice snapped her out of her thoughts about the exhausting whirlwind she would soon have to endure to please his demanding relatives. "Come on, suggest something. Maybe you have some original ideas?" Their marriage had seen its ups and downs over the past year and 4 months, but today, Santiago had crossed every line. Ignoring the fact that Maria hadn't even finished her dinner, he pressed on. "Well, since you have no initiative, get a notepad and pen, or open your notes app, and write down what needs to be bought. Keep in mind, fish is better bought at the market rather than from the store, and don't put it off until the last week before New Year's." Maria sipped her coffee while jotting down the shopping list under her husband's dictation. But when he snatched the chocolate from her hand before she could eat it, she quietly asked an unexpected question. "Do you think I'm some kind of spineless doormat?" Santiago grimaced. "Ugh, Maria, what kind of language is that? I get that you grew up in an environment where swearing and prison slang were the norm, but could you at least try to restrain yourself in decent company? And really, getting upset over one little chocolate? I'm just looking out for you, making sure you keep your figure. Consider it my personal sacrifice for your sake." As he spoke, Santiago leisurely unwrapped the candy wrapper and, with a final flourish, popped the chocolate into his mouth, chewing it with exaggerated pleasure. The dramatic expressions and noises he made, as if teasing her, were the final straw for Maria. She suddenly blurted out, "No, I'm not upset over the chocolate. I just want to remind you that I'm your wife, not a servant who has to be satisfied with scraps from the master's table." Santiago smirked. "Oh wow, listen to you. Living in comfort like you're on vacation, and you still complain. Seriously, what kind of person are you? You've completely ruined my mood." He washed down the candy with the last sip of coffee from his mug and walked off to his room, not even considering helping with the cleanup or apologizing. Soon, the sounds of a video game intro filled the apartment, while the dirty dishes left on the table deepened Maria's sense of despair. She remembered how she once loved cooking for her husband, how she had even gone out of her way to please his family. She had put in effort, searched for recipes, experimented, but in return, she mostly received criticism, passive-aggressive comments, and orders. And while Santiago had at least occasionally helped in the past, even just washing his own dishes, lately he hadn't so much as touched a sponge. The game sounds from the other room grew louder. Maria turned back to the comedy she had been watching, hoping to distract herself from the unpleasant scene. But neither the brilliant actors nor the familiar jokes could pull her away from reality. Santiago's behavior that evening wasn't just a warning sign of a troubled marriage, it was the funeral bell tolling for their so-called happy family. It was foolish to keep waiting, to keep hoping that Santiago would change. On the screen, a charming actress was announcing to her engineer husband that she was leaving him. Maria suddenly felt inspired by the character's example. In truth, even if she left Santiago without a solid plan, even if she ran away, things couldn't possibly get worse. At the very least, she would finally feel like a person again, not a silent domestic servant. Without hesitation, she opened her banking app, and for the first time that evening, she felt a glimmer of relief. It was incredibly fortunate that she hadn't yet purchased Santiago's Christmas gift, she had only placed a pre-order. And even better, the seller had delayed the delivery. Now, the money meant for a new gaming console and accessories would instead help her stay afloat for the first few weeks and rent a place. Running away was nothing new to her, and this time, the circumstances were even more favorable than 3 years ago. Back then, she had fled her hometown in a hurry, unable to endure life in a tiny apartment where her mother constantly paraded in new potential husbands. There had been so many, Maria could hardly remember their faces. A never-ending carousel of men. Some of them had even fathered children with her mother, so the 2-bedroom apartment was officially home to 5 registered residents. Technically, the family wasn't classified as dysfunctional since their lifestyle wasn't openly chaotic and the children were fed, clothed, and housed. But in Maria's opinion, this was simply a failure of the social services system. When her mother's belly had started growing yet again, Maria had finally snapped. "Mom, for God's sake, ask the doctors to tie your tubes already. We're packed into that so-called kids' room like sardines in a can. If you bring another baby in, that'll be the end of it. You have your maternity benefits, use them. What are you waiting for? Oh, right, you're too busy building your personal life and popping out kids. Like a stray cat, seriously." Then came a terrible argument. Her mother screamed that Maria was an ungrateful brat. The girl retorted that she'd rather be that than remain silent and not try to knock some sense into her. "Mom, don't you get it? A baby won't make a man stay. How can you not understand this? Isn't having the four of us proof enough? Stay out of my personal life, you little brat. You think you can lecture me? If I want, I'll have 4 more. After that ugly fight, Maria packed a small bag and left for the big city, where she eventually met Santiago. Just 2 months after their first meeting, they had a small wedding. Or rather, a quiet family gathering with only close relatives. Santiago's mother, Aurora, was clearly displeased with her new daughter-in-law. And when Maria's mother arrived and casually mentioned how many children she had, Aurora's expression soured completely. No, she didn't like this new family one bit. She remained flawlessly polite to everyone at the gathering, unwilling to ruin her son's mood, but later, she took out her frustration on Maria. No matter how hard Maria tried to please her, nothing was ever good enough. Everything she did was, in Aurora's eyes, wrong. It seemed that Santiago had learned his way of speaking to his wife from his mother. Before long, he too became easily irritated by Maria, and he had no qualms about making that irritation known. Maria had placed so many hopes in this marriage, but in the end, it all boiled down to endless criticism from her husband and his family. Well, that meant it was time to turn the page on this chapter as well. She decided to return to her hometown, where rent was far cheaper. Thankfully, she had built a stable remote career during her marriage, so she wasn't tied to any specific location. Visiting her mother and younger siblings also seemed like the right thing to do. They hadn't seen each other since Maria's wedding, only exchanged polite holiday phone calls. The shadow of their last ugly fight still loomed over their relationship. With her decision made, Maria closed her laptop. That laptop, her main source of income, was the first thing she packed, along with its charger. She fit a few clothes into her backpack and needed just one more large bag for the rest. At least it's winter, she reassured herself while packing. I can just wear my coat, jeans, warm sweaters, and boots. That'll save space. Still, no matter how much she tried to stay strong, she couldn't shake the feeling of sadness. It was suddenly painfully clear that she had almost nothing to take with her. How had it come to this? How had she spent nearly all her earnings on Santiago and his apartment? Opening her phone, she booked a train ticket through an app. After checking the departure times, she chose a lower bunk in a sleeper car. It was pricier than a regular seat, but didn't she deserve at least some comfort? After all, the journey would take all night and spill into the next day. Next, she booked a hostel room in her hometown. With everything set, she finally stepped into Santiago's gaming room. Annoyed at being interrupted, he turned to face her with a sour expression. His reaction to her announcement that she was leaving became the final nail in the coffin of their marriage. Good riddance, then. Why are you even telling me? If you've decided to leave, just go. And don't expect me to beg you to stay. There's practically a line of girls waiting to take your place, girls so much better than you couldn't even compare. Then he sneered. But you? You're useless. Nobody wants you. You're nothing special. Your place is in the kitchen, and cleaning is the peak of your abilities. Without another word, Santiago turned back to his game, not even bothering to say goodbye to his almost former wife. Maria had nothing left to do but quietly leave the apartment that had never truly felt like home. Though December had only just begun to settle in, festive decorations were already appearing throughout the city. Yet, not even these symbols of the upcoming holiday could lift Maria's spirits. The train station greeted her with its usual hustle and bustle. After a relatively short wait, Maria was settling into her temporary refuge. Her traveling companions were an elderly married couple. The man and woman sat side by side across from Maria and, without waiting for the train to depart, began unpacking their simple homemade meal, freshly baked pastries, triangular packs of processed cheese, and boiled eggs. The woman introduced herself warmly and extended an invitation. "I'm Juana Vega, and this is my husband, Daniel. Please, join us. We're happy to share what we have. It's very nice to meet you. My name is Maria. Thank you for the invitation, but I'm not hungry at all. I just ate before leaving." "Oh, but you must try at least one of these pastries," Juana insisted. Daniel, speaking in a quiet tone, gently chided his wife. "Juana, don't push. Let's not impose." Maria was grateful for the man's consideration, but Juana was determined. When the train attendant brought them all coffee, Maria finally gave in, accepting a pastry and offering sincere thanks. Juana beamed with pride at the compliments to her baking. A few stops later, as Maria and her companions were preparing to settle in for the night, the compartment doors slid open. A large woman entered, wrapped in a dark gray woolen shawl draped over a black winter coat. Something about her appearance evoked images of a wandering Romani traveler, though her clothes were modern and unremarkable. Beneath the coat, she wore jeans and a thick, intricately hand-knitted sweater. She stood slightly hunched, as if her back pained her, and when she spoke, her voice was surprisingly soothing, with a slight rasp. "Good evening to you all. My name is Alejandra. Looks like we'll be travel companions." Juana and Daniel greeted her quietly, almost in unison. Maria introduced herself as well. Alejandra's gaze landed on her, not unsettling, but piercing, before she spoke again. "Maria, I didn't manage to get a lower bunk. If I try climbing up, they might have to scrape me off the ceiling afterward," she chuckled playfully before continuing. "Would you be kind enough to switch with me?" Daniel grumbled under his breath, defending Maria's right to keep the spot she had paid extra for. "Lower bunks cost more, you know." Alejandra turned to him with a knowing smile and replied, "You're absolutely right, sir. But I wasn't asking you or your lovely wife, was I? So there's no need to discuss extra payment with me." The words were spoken in an even and polite tone, yet a sudden chill seemed to seep into the compartment from nowhere. The woman shifted her dark brown eyes back to Maria and calmly stated, "Your esteemed companion is right, both that a lower bunk costs more and that I don't have much money on me. But I had to leave in a hurry, and now I have no choice but to ask. So, will you give up your seat for me?" Maria hesitated, but only briefly, before nodding in agreement. "No problem. I'll just toss my things up top, and you can get settled." Alejandra's smile widened, suddenly radiating a warmth that made her almost charming. Her eyes seemed to glow with a soft light. Encouragingly, she showered Maria with gratitude. "Oh, thank you so much, dear girl. May everything in your life turn out just as it should for you. I don't have any luggage, so you don't need to move your things. But I can see you left in a hurry too, didn't have time to gather much, and don't own many possessions. Of course, I could offer you money for your kindness, but you're generous, compassionate, you don't fuss over small things. Besides, I can see that money isn't what you need right now. My advice is worth more than all the riches in the world at this moment." Alejandra straightened up, moving with surprising agility as she sat beside Maria. She reached out and gently touched the back of Maria's hand. Turning gracefully to look her traveling companion straight in the eyes, she spoke in a low, steady voice. "I can tell you don't put much stock in fortune-telling, and I won't try to convince you otherwise. I could read the cards for you, but right now, you're so vulnerable, so open, you're like a book, easy to read just as you are. For Maria, the entire world seemed to fade away. All that remained was the hypnotic voice of the fortune teller and her mesmerizing gaze, drawing her in and making it impossible to look away. You're not heading exactly where you need to be, girl, but your first step is the right one. It is very good, crucial, even, that you are returning home now. Your family needs you. Without you, they won't manage. Your main task now is to take the right path forward. When you arrive in your hometown, go straight to your mother. 5 burdens will weigh down on you like stones around your neck. How you deal with them will determine your future. Trust the one you see as an enemy. Help those who are worse off than you. And fate will take care of your happiness itself. But even if the temptation arises to return to someone who never valued you, do not take that road back. This much is true, even without any visions. I could tell you this just by looking at you. But you must remember it always. Move forward, girl. Don't look back. There are no answers in the past. Alejandra gently stroked Maria's hand before letting it go and then turned to the wary Juana. And you, don't be afraid, not of me and not of what's to come. Your daughter will end up in the hands of a skilled doctor and everything will go perfectly. And you'll make peace with your son. He's a good man and he's chosen a good woman for himself. She just doesn't open up easily to people she doesn't know well. Daniel perked up, nudging his wife lightly with his elbow as he whispered excitedly. See? I keep telling you, you're too hard on Angelus. She's a good girl. And Gerard, he's head over heels for her, you can see it plain as day. Alejandra's eyes dimmed. Now she had become her old self again, just as she had been when she first entered the compartment. She hunched over and even seemed to have aged. The fortune teller let out a tired yawn, covering her mouth, then explained. Excuse me, I'll lie down for a bit. I barely slept last night. Full moon. Her fellow travelers nodded. Juana even grew bold enough to offer some advice. Alejandra, try eating a bit of honey before bed if you're not allergic. Sometimes just a teaspoon is enough to fix the situation. Thank you, Alejandra replied gratefully. Daniel tactfully left the compartment so that his wife and their travel companion could change for the night. Once all the preparations were complete, the accidental acquaintances wished each other good night and settled into sleep. Maria, having given up her lower bunk to Alejandra, climbed up to the upper berth. Despite her fears of insomnia, she quickly drifted off into a world of dreams. Vivid, colorful images flickered like a cheerful kaleidoscope, and when she opened her eyes in the morning, she had an overwhelming sense that something important, something truly fateful, was approaching. Maria looked down but saw no sign of Alejandra in the compartment. The bedding on the lower bunk was gone as well. In fact, there was nothing at all to indicate that anyone had even slept there. As if the meeting with the fortune teller and her strange words had never happened. The young woman carefully climbed down and quietly left the compartment to freshen up. When she returned, she ran into Daniel and Juana at the door. The couple greeted Maria with a warm good morning and informed her that their stop was in an hour. Almost the entire remaining time before parting was spent discussing their mysterious fellow traveler from the night before. Juana admitted, "Oh, Maria, to be honest, the first thing I did when I woke up was check if all our things were still here. I feel ashamed, of course, but my stereotypes are just that strong. Still, I was very impressed by Alejandra's abilities yesterday. She simply couldn't have known that our daughter needed surgery or that our son had brought home a girl I didn't like. Even if it was just a coincidence, the accuracy of her words was uncanny. It makes you believe in all these predictions, whether you want to or not." Daniel kept his thoughts on the matter to himself, while Maria, in her usual candid manner, shared with her companions. "Honestly, when I first woke up, it all felt like a dream." After a quick breakfast, the travelers, moved by an unexpected sense of camaraderie, exchanged phone numbers. The couple waved goodbye to Maria from the platform, and for the rest of the journey, she traveled alone, trying to decipher the fortune teller's predictions. Her hometown greeted her with a sharp, gusty wind, flinging icy snowflakes against her face. Maria had planned to check into a hostel first before heading to her mother's, but she suddenly recalled Alejandra's prophecy. Though it was less convenient, she decided to go straight to the apartment where she had spent her childhood. Not wanting to be frugal at that moment, she ordered a taxi and gazed out the window, marveling at the contrast between cities that weren't even that far apart. Familiar streets and shops passed by, and Maria noted with melancholy that time here seemed to have slowed, bringing almost no changes. The taxi driver grumbled good-naturedly about the idiots driving on the roads, about the roads themselves, and about those responsible for their lack of maintenance. But upon realizing that his passenger wasn't in the mood for conversation, he fell silent and turned on the radio. By the time Maria reached her childhood home to the sound of old-fashioned tunes, a heavy weight of anxiety had settled deep in her chest. The key turned easily in the lock, and as Maria stepped into the apartment, she was immediately hit by the unpleasant smells of burnt food and soiled clothing, the stench of which even the sharp scent of bleach couldn't mask. "Mom, I'm home," Maria said quietly, fearing she might wake the youngest sister, 2-year-old Ursula. In response, Jimena, the 14-year-old, appeared from the children's room, startled either by surprise or joy, and rushed to embrace her. Through her broken speech, interspersed with sobs, Maria understood that something bad had happened, but it was unclear what. Naturally, staying at the hostel was no longer an option. She had to be home, with her family, to share in the troubles. Placing her bag and backpack on the floor, Maria led her sister to the kitchen, made her drink a glass of water, and wash her face with cold water. After Jimena had calmed down a bit, the older sister gently asked her, "Now, tell me everything, but no more tears, or I won't be able to understand anything." The girl sniffled and began the difficult story. When Mom's latest boyfriend ran off, leaving her with Ursula, everything really went downhill. Luckily, Martina, Anna, and I ate at school, and Sergio was getting food at daycare. Mom completely neglected everything. She yelled at us all the time, even slapped me, called us freeloaders, said we ruined her life. Shocked, Maria remained silent, biting her lip and mentally berating herself for not calling home sooner to check on her mother and the younger ones. She lightly patted her sister on the back as Jimena continued. "About 2 months ago, Mom brought Marco into our apartment. I didn't like him from the start. He's handsome, but so cocky, his eyes kept darting around, and his gaze was like an X-ray. He tried to act nice, showering us with treats, chocolates, chips, candies, and all sorts of fruits. Mom became so happy. She said soon we'd move to a wonderful house where everyone would have their own room. She smiled at us and became kind again. She went for long walks with Marco and Ursula. We were so stupid, thinking everything was going to get better. But it just got worse." Jimena sniffled again, wiping her tears from swollen eyes, and moved to the most frightening and strange part of her story. "A week ago, Mom said she was going to spend the weekend with Marco's family. She bought them gifts, did her hair, even got a manicure, and wore a new dress. She left Ursula at home under our supervision and promised she'd be back quickly. The first day after she left, she called us to check how we were doing. Her voice was calm, and she promised she'd be back by Monday. Then the next day, she sent me a text saying that Marco's family had welcomed her very warmly and that they convinced her to stay with them a bit longer." Maria shook her head in reproach. "Oh, Jimena. Why didn't you tell me? How did you even manage here? Are we strangers to you? What would you have done if I hadn't shown up today? Would you have kept quiet like a partisan?" Seeing that her sister was about to burst into tears, Maria tried to stop her flow of reproaches. "I'm not scolding you. I'm actually impressed that you took responsibility for everything. But how do you manage to go to school? Who takes care of Ursula?" Jimena lowered her head and confessed. "I'm not going to school. I had to lie and say I was sick and stay home with Ursula. I kept waiting for Mom to call, but after the first text, the communication was reduced to just messages. Whenever I tried calling, her phone was always unreachable. So Martina and Anna take Sergio to daycare, and I try to manage things here and look after the little one. In the evening, one of us, or sometimes all of us together, picks up the little brother. I'm really struggling with it all. And to make matters worse, the washing machine broke. Today, the porridge burned, and all we have left are grains, and Sergio keeps asking for sweets. Then his caregiver started nagging me, saying it's been too long since she's seen our mom and that we should contribute to the group's decorations. I searched everywhere, but couldn't find any money. Maria asked, "Did you check Mom's hiding spot, behind the wall of the wardrobe?" Jimena nodded and replied, "It was empty." After these words, the girl, who had been holding herself together, burst into tears again, and Maria had to calm her sister down once more. "Jimena, enough now, don't cry. We'll figure everything out." With hope in her eyes, Jimena looked up at her older sister and asked, "Maria, dear, you'll help us find Mom, right?" "Of course, but you'll need to go to school so there won't be any questions. Otherwise, they'll start saying education is your main responsibility, and you can't treat it carelessly." Jimena timidly smiled at the expertly mimicked tone of their teacher. Maria hugged her tightly and outlined the plan of action. "Okay, here's the plan. First, we wait for the girls, get Ursula together, and head out to the stores for groceries and a washing machine. Then, we'll come back, and while you have lunch, I'll go to the police station and file a missing person report for Mom." Jimena perked up. Her eyes became tearful again, and she nervously asked, "Maria, do you think they'll take us to an orphanage? I don't want to grow up there, like Mom did. The neighbor downstairs already hinted that they might get social services involved because of the noise and running around in the evenings." Maria hugged her sister again and promised, "No one is going to do that. Don't worry. I'm already of legal age. Everything will be fine. We'll get things in order a bit, and no one will bother us. We don't have time to sit around, though. Let's get busy, and while we work, you can tell me everything you know about this Marco." Jimena sighed. "Well, to be honest, all I know is his name." "What about his appearance? Does he have any distinctive features?" "No, except he's handsome, with a mustache and kind of like stubble. And when he smiles, he has dimples on his cheeks. I didn't even think to take a picture of him." As Maria asked Jimena to take care of the now awake Ursula, who didn't even recognize her oldest sister, she began cleaning and reflecting on how Marco's description seemed deliberately easy to alter. Just like that, the mustache and stubble could be removed, transforming his appearance. With a sigh, Maria first rinsed the dirty clothes and then scraped the burned pot. Before she could check the remaining food supplies, Martina and Anna returned from school. After a busy shopping trip, Maria, as planned, headed to the police station. Reluctantly, the officer accepted the report and then, sympathizing with the distressed visitor, advised, "You might want to contact a search party. Sometimes it proves to be more effective." Maria, caught up in the whirlwind of problems, no longer had time to think about her quarrel with Santiago or the collapse of her family. There was no time even to file for a divorce. At 21, the woman found herself responsible for 4 sisters and a brother. And even though Jimena and the 10-year-old Martina were already real helpers, Anna, the first grader, Sergio, and tiny Ursula still needed support and encouragement. Maria did her best. Another problem, though expected, came as an unpleasant surprise. Due to the lack of time to work, income became scarce, and their financial reserves were almost depleted. About a week after their separation, Santiago called Maria. Judging by his voice, he wasn't entirely sober. "Well, we've joked enough. Come back, Maria. I miss you so much, and I understand everything now. I'll reduce my complaints. So, come on, stop sulking. It's boring and lonely without you." Maria didn't give in to his pleas and told him, "Find another slave, Santiago. I'm not coming back to you. Especially since I have more important tasks to deal with now." Realizing that his pleas were not working, Santiago began to curse profusely, and Maria happily blocked his number. A final attempt to bring his runaway wife back came from Santiago a week before New Year's. He called from an unknown number and, with a sweet voice, asked, "All right, Maria, enough sulking, come back. You've stayed at your parents' long enough. There's very little time left to prepare for the guests. Your return would be the best gift for me. Santiago, I've already told you, I'm not returning to the job of a household slave. I'm done. If you want a divorce, you can file it yourself. I don't have time for that." Maria ended the conversation after hearing Ursula cry and rushed to calm her down. Shortly after, as soon as she had managed to distract the younger sister, Maria received a call from her mother-in-law. Maria hesitated for a moment, but eventually answered. "Hello, Aurora." Her mother-in-law spoke in a calm, even tone, though it was likely hard for her to maintain. "Enough of this, Maria. Santiago is completely beside himself, and he even announced today that the New Year's celebration is canceled because you ran away from home. I need to remind you that well-mannered people don't act this way. Or do you have a new relationship, as my son suspects? If that's the case, it would be more honest to admit everything and divorce. Santiago said you're claiming that you don't have time, but that's simply impolite. You should have come back, and we could have talked things over and decided what to do next." Maria, tense and overwhelmed by the uncertainty about her mother's fate, couldn't take it anymore. "You know what, Aurora, stop trying to play God and judging other people's actions. I don't have time for talks or to go back to your son. My mother is missing, and all attempts to find her are leading to dead ends. So, let Santiago do me one last favor and handle everything in such a way that I don't have to travel to your city." Feeling the genuine pain in her daughter-in-law's words, Aurora suddenly softened her tone. "All right, Maria, tell me more. When and under what circumstances did Elsa disappear? What do you need to know the details for?" Maria replied quite rudely, but her mother-in-law, seemingly not noticing the rudeness, repeated, "Tell me everything you know. I understand you probably think of me as your enemy, but I've never wished harm on you, and I don't wish it now. Speak, Maria, and I'll see how I can help." As Aurora spoke, a memory from the fortune teller's words struck Maria. She was also reaching a point of desperation, ready to grab at any chance, no matter how slim, to find out where her mother was. Aurora, having listened carefully to everything Maria shared, admitted, "I won't lie and say Elsa's case is simple, but I'll try to find additional information. Fortunately, I still have connections in the relevant circles. I know that my words might not mean much to you right now, but hold on, Maria. You can't give up or lose hope because right now you are the main support for your sisters and brother. I'll explain everything to Santiago, so don't worry. He won't bother you. Goodbye for now." After hanging up with Aurora, Maria sighed. Once again, the fortune teller was right. Her mother-in-law, whom she had thought of as an enemy, had suddenly extended a hand of help. The strict, no-nonsense woman turned out to be compassionate and empathetic toward others' pain. This revelation was a true eye-opener for Maria, but the unhappy neighbor who lived one floor below her had a nasty surprise in store. She had gone ahead with her threat, and in addition to all her other troubles, a commission from the Child Protection Services showed up at Maria's apartment. This was a very hard blow and almost an insurmountable test. The women were so impudent that Maria had to hold herself back from kicking them out. Meanwhile, little Sergio, who still hadn't learned to hide his emotions, loudly expressed exactly what he thought. "We didn't invite them over, they should leave." Jimena, understanding that things were heading in a very unpleasant direction, gently took her younger brother into the room, promising to play with him. Maria, trying to smooth things over, said, "Please excuse my brother, he's still not fully raised. I understand this is your job, but I ask that you be understanding. It's difficult for us right now, but we're doing our best. And I assure you, everything is fine. We're all fed, clean, and dressed, as you can see. We have first courses and mashed potatoes with cutlets in the fridge. The commission walked through the rooms and inspected the kitchen. Maria, observing their facial expressions, anxiously tried to guess what conclusions they were drawing, nervously tugging at the hem of her t-shirt. Finally, the lead woman from the commission reluctantly muttered through gritted teeth, "All right, we can see that you're trying. There are no objective reasons to take the children. But keep in mind that your neighbor is very active. Try to convince your sisters and brother to behave more quietly. Your family is now under observation. Thank you. Happy New Year to you, too." Wishing you health and well-being, Maria blurted out and quickly shut the door behind the unwelcome guests. The scared children, including the little one, rushed out of the room into the hallway and began hugging their older sister. Maria patted them and promised, "It's all right, we'll manage. We're a team. But we need to be quieter so that the neighbors don't have reasons to complain about our family. Do we all understand?" The children nodded in unison. Even Ursula, imitating her older sisters and brother, repeated the gesture that needed no words. There were only 3 days left until the holiday. Anna was already on vacation, and Jimena and Martina were still going to school, although there were virtually no classes left. The final grades had already been given, and no new topics were being taught. Maria had prepared small gifts for everyone within a modest budget, but she knew that the best gift would be the return of her mother. However, there was still no positive news from the police, the search team, or her mother-in-law. A couple of times Maria was invited to an identification, but fortunately, the unknown individuals weren't her mother. Leaving the younger ones at home, the woman went to the train stations to personally question cashiers, cleaning staff, and other personnel, but there was no result. The waiting for news was exhausting. No miracle happened by New Year's, even though Maria knew exactly what her sisters and brother had wished for. The disappointment on their faces, when the coordinator from the search team rang the doorbell instead of their beloved mother, was painfully obvious. Carlos, who had come to see the woman because of her selfless care for the children, brought fruit for the holiday table as a gift. Unexpectedly, Jimena saw the bag and burst into tears, running to her room. Maria barely managed to get the sister to share that the girl had unpleasant associations. "You know, Maria, this Marco, who I'm sure is the reason Mom disappeared, used to bring fruit in bags just like these." Carlos, unintentionally overhearing Jimena's confession, became concerned. "That could be a clue. As far as I know, these bags aren't very common. The chain of stores is not too big, and we could try to trace this elusive Marco through that lead." After quickly saying goodbye, the man left, giving Maria and the others a glimmer of hope for a happy resolution. As agreed with her mother-in-law, the woman shared the new lead with Aurora, who quickly responded, "Great, I'll pass the information along to the right people." A small sprout of hope began to grow. But the mother of many children did not return home even after 2 weeks. Aurora called her daughter-in-law again in February and said, "Maria, don't worry, please. It looks like your mother has been found. She's in a hospital in another city, and it will take a few days for her to recover and get better." "Thank you so much, Aurora," Maria said, and tears streamed from her eyes. "Don't cry," her mother-in-law requested. "I can feel that you're crying. Wipe your tears, and I'll send you the address." After receiving the information from her mother-in-law, Maria contacted the search coordinator and shared the happy news. Carlos warned her, "Just calm down, I'll be there in 15 minutes, and we'll head to the hospital together. Think about who you'll ask to look after the kids, because we may need to stay a bit longer for various reasons." Maria was extremely grateful to the coordinator for helping her find her mother. She was thankful for both the advice and his willingness to go with her to another city. She didn't want to get the younger children's hopes up, but Jimena had already guessed the reason her older sister was suddenly preparing to leave and quietly asked, "Tell me, Maria, are you going to see Mom?" "I hope so, Jimena, I really hope so. Aurora said all the signs point to our mom being found, but I'm too scared to jinx it." Listen, I might come back tomorrow. Should I ask someone to stay with you? No need, Maria, don't worry, we'll manage, Jimena replied, sounding very mature. Martina and Anna will help me with the younger ones, we'll have pasta for dinner, go to bed early, and tomorrow morning we'll be waiting for you with good news. The sisters hugged each other, and just then, Maria's phone rang. Carlos informed her that he had arrived and was waiting by the building. On the way, deep down, Maria felt a growing anxiety. What if it was a mistake, and instead of her mom, there was a stranger in that other city? But her fears turned out to be unfounded. Thin, pale, bruised, and scratched, but there, lying in a hospital bed, was Maria's mom. Maria, I'm sorry, I think I let everyone down, Elsa cried. God, I'm so stupid, I was tricked like a little girl. I had almost given up hope of seeing any of my children again. It's all right, Mom, calm down, it's all behind us now. I'll find out when they can release you, and I'll come right back. Luckily, Elsa's condition didn't cause much concern for the doctors. That same day, after Maria's tearful persuasion, Elsa was released from the hospital so she could reunite with her children as soon as possible. The mother and daughter settled in the back seats of the car, and Carlos carefully drove them back. Elsa, gnawed by guilt from within, began to tell Maria, "You know, all the accusations you once made about me were completely justified. Our relationship with Marco, when we first met, felt like a fairy tale. Despite having so many children and all my life experience, I hung on to his words and believed he was going to marry me. I was so happy, looking forward to meeting his family, planning what I would say. I dreamed of finding happiness. Marco kept telling me how extraordinary I was. Yeah, extraordinary fool. Marco, so caring, brought me a cup of coffee at a gas station. I took a few sips and suddenly felt dizzy. I woke up in a basement, converted into a sewing workshop. Neither the gifts I had brought with me nor my phone were there. I tried to stay calm, but I couldn't see anything good around me. The basement showed signs of other people having been there. In the corner behind a screen, there was some kind of makeshift toilet. I managed to find a bottle of water, but I was alone in that basement for several days. Then they brought in another victim of trust. Her story was very similar to mine, with a few changes. Marco came by on the second day of my captivity, when I was starving. He said that if my new friend and I behaved well, they would treat us decently. He specifically told me that I was worth even less than the dust on the floor, and if he wanted to, it would be easy to get rid of me. No one would even notice I was gone, and no one would make the effort to search for me. My kids wouldn't be heard, even if they screamed at the top of their lungs that their mom was missing. Who knows, maybe they'd think it was all just their imagination. So, all we could do was sew whatever we were told and hope for a lucky break. Maria nodded. Yes, that's pretty much how it went. Jimena was even afraid to report you missing to the police because she was getting text messages saying you were okay, and she didn't want to raise any suspicion with Child Protective Services. Smart girl, Jimena. It's really good that she came to you for help. Marco had a well-established system. He and his accomplices needed strong workers, and as soon as someone slowed down with the sewing, they were quickly eliminated, and they would find another victim to replace them. They kept us scared by telling us that Marco knew my address and the schedules of my children. I couldn't risk their health. One of the officers who helped free me quietly whispered that my partner and I were lucky. Apparently, we were practically sentenced to be disposed of, and only the need to fulfill a large order for custom-made souvenir gifts kept them from getting rid of us. Of course, the scoundrels referred to their dark deeds as staff rotation. Marco lied, saying that they moved their undercover workers from one location to another. But it was easy to guess that those who no longer fulfilled their role were physically eliminated. I was very lucky, as the officer said, that someone very convincing made my search taken seriously. I'm proud of you, daughter. You showed incredible determination. It wasn't me, Mom, Maria admitted. My mother-in-law helped. Aurora used some of her connections, and thanks to her and Jimena's attentiveness, everything worked out. Well, I'll be darned, Elsa was surprised. I always thought Aurora believed her son made a huge mistake marrying you. Probably, Maria said sadly. In the sense that she's probably right. But still, it was Aurora who pushed the search forward. I'm just happy that you're here with me now. Elsa began apologizing for their past argument, but her daughter interrupted her. It's all in the past now, it doesn't matter. The important thing is that you're with us now. Tired, Elsa started to cry, and Maria asked her gently. Hey, no. The kids need to see you in a good mood. They were all so worried. Elsa's reunion with her daughters and son was so touching that even Carlos, who had witnessed many endings to searches, both happy and tragic, was deeply moved. Soon after the joyful event, Santiago arrived to make amends. But their meeting didn't go as he had expected. As the fortune teller had advised, Maria wasn't going to return to a man who had devalued all of her efforts. Carefully choosing her words, she confessed. Santiago, it's actually a good thing we fought. If we hadn't, who knows how things would have turned out. I'm really grateful to you, and especially to Aurora. I completely understand that she was against me and, most likely, had every right to feel that way. But I'll never forget that she provided real help in finding my mom. Well, let's make up, now that everything has worked out, the man suggested. However, Maria shook her head negatively. If you think carefully, you'll realize that the best way to thank your mom is to free yourself. We're just too different. What you need from me isn't love, it's comfort. And that can be easily provided by household appliances. I still haven't filed for divorce, despite all these troubles, but I'll fix that mistake today. I hope you won't create any obstacles. We don't have children, we haven't bought anything major, and I'm not claiming anything, so let's part as peacefully as possible, as far as that's possible. Stubborn Santiago had no choice but to agree with Maria's arguments. Soon after, their marriage ended. However, she continued to communicate with her former mother-in-law, and their relationship was far warmer than it had been when they were relatives. Maria stayed with her family, even though Carlos had long suggested that she move in with him. But after her painful experience with her first marriage, she was in no hurry and tried to explain. You're a very good man, and I like you a lot, but I'm sure that before taking such an important step, we need to get to know each other better. Carlos smiled broadly. I already know you. You've supported your siblings and brother through the hardest times. That's worth a lot. I'd probably be completely lost if I had to face such a problem. 5 kids to take care of. Don't downplay your talents, Carlos. Maria replied. I admire your organizational skills. Not everyone could approach someone else's trouble the way you did. But my situation is completely different. These are my own children, how could I have abandoned them? Nevertheless, thanks to Carlos' persistence, their relationship slowly developed. Elsa, who after the unpleasant incident focused on her children and stopped thinking about her own personal life, advised her daughter. Don't let Carlos go, he's a good man. Oh, Mom, when I first met and married Santiago, I thought he was a good man too, but everything ended in disaster, and I don't want to repeat. Besides, I'm not thinking about that right now. We need to get closure on the kidnapping case, or we won't be able to live peacefully. Thanks to Elsa's detailed testimony, Marco's criminal activities and those of his accomplices were brought to a halt. The money that the crafty crook had managed to steal from her hidden stash was returned. The amount wasn't very large, but the restoration of justice was far more valuable. With Maria's help, Elsa, using her maternity capital, managed to improve her living conditions a year after her kidnapping, choosing a larger apartment near the old one. Now, the children had more space and comfort, and they didn't even have to change schools or daycare. Elsa dedicated all her time to her family, but also kept encouraging Maria to pursue a relationship with Carlos. He's been circling around you for a year, and you still can't make up your mind. You'll wait too long, and someone will take him away. Not knowing what to do, Maria turned to Aurora for advice, with whom she maintained a long-distance relationship. To her surprise, her former mother-in-law supported Elsa's point of view. Of course, it's not easy for you to believe in the sincerity of feelings again, but I think it's time for you to open your heart. The fact that things didn't work out with Santiago doesn't matter. Carlos is a completely different man. Go forward, my girl, and don't look back at the past. At those words, Maria flinched. It was exactly the same phrase, word for word, that the fortune teller had used to encourage her. There was something mystical about it, and the young woman decided that it was indeed time to move toward new happiness. Carlos was incredibly happy when Maria didn't reject his latest proposal but instead agreed. The couple decided to celebrate their wedding in a family setting at Elsa's apartment, and the honored guest was Aurora. During the joyful celebration, beautiful wishes were shared, and the bride's sisters and brothers sang a touching song. Maria was happy. And when she stepped out onto the balcony to get some air, she was amazed to see the fortune teller standing below, giving her a thumbs up. Maria shouted, "Alejandra, come up for a visit." Apartment 7. "Who are you talking to?" Elsa asked her daughter. Maria turned away for just a second, and when she looked back at the street, Alejandra was already gone. "Thank you," the bride whispered quietly. "Everything came true, just as you said."
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.